The first time I saw my mother's face was not in a photo album, but in a newspaper clipping titled "Woman Dies in Fire, Infant Found Alive in Ashes." I was 9 years old. The headline didn't shock me. What shattered me was the photo beside it, a woman with soft brown eyes, a dimpled smile, and thick hair falling over her shoulder. The same eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. Until then, I had been told she died in childbirth. Not in a fire, not like that. I was raised by my aunt and uncle in a small desert town in New Mexico, where everything felt like dust and secrets. My name is Elias Reyes, and if you're watching this, it's because you want to know how a boy raised in the shadows of lies uncovered the truth, and why that truth burned hotter than the fire that killed my mother. They told me she was delicate, fragile, but the woman in the photo stood with her arms crossed, wearing a black leather jacket and a fierce stare that didn't match the narrative I'd been fed my entire life. I stole that clipping from my uncle's drawer when he wasn't looking, folded it into my sock, and hid it beneath my mattress. For years, it was the only proof I had that something about my life didn't add up. That was the day my curiosity was born, the same day I learned how to keep quiet. You see, Aunt Rosa and Uncle Manuel were kind in a way that made your skin itch. Everything they gave came with guilt. A second serving of rice came with a comment like, "You're lucky we didn't put you in foster care." A warm bed came with cold silences when I asked about my mum. They had a son, Luca, my cousin, same age as me, but where I was told to clean my own dishes, he was handed fresh juice before he even asked. Where I was told, books don't feed you, he was gifted a new tablet every school year. Where I was treated like a shadow, he was the golden boy of the Reyes household. But I didn't hate him, not until the night he stole something from me that he could never give back. That night didn't come until years later, but the build-up began slowly, like a steady leak before the ceiling caves in. At 15, I found a letter tucked into an old Bible in the attic addressed to someone named Ma. The letter wasn't signed, but the words were haunting. "I'm scared they'll find out who Elias really is. If anything happens to me, please tell him he deserves to know the truth, that he wasn't abandoned, that I loved him enough to die for him." I didn't recognize the handwriting, but I knew it wasn't Aunt Rosa's. That night I asked her who S was. She dropped the bowl she was washing, and it shattered in the sink. Her silence said everything. Uncle Manuel appeared in the doorway minutes later, his face tight and stern. "You been snooping again?" he asked. I didn't answer. He stepped forward, slapped the back of my head not hard, just enough to remind me of my place. "Don't dig into graves, Elias. They stink." That was the first time I truly feared him, and from that moment, I knew they were hiding something big. By 17, I had learned how to work with silence. I stopped asking questions. I played the quiet boy. I studied hard, worked part-time at the gas station, and watched from the sidelines while Luca dated the girls I liked, drove the car I fixed, and wore the clothes I once folded in laundry. But I was waiting, observing, until something happened that forced everything into motion. Grandma, Soledad, dear. I barely knew her. She lived in a care home in Arizona and was supposedly senile for the last decade. But when the lawyer called Uncle Manuel and said there was a will, he turned pale, said she had nothing to leave behind, claimed it was a misunderstanding. But I noticed the tremble in his fingers when he hung up the phone. 3 days later, while everyone else was asleep, I snuck into his office and found the copy of that will in a manila envelope marked confidential. Inside was a single page, neatly typed, "To Elias Reyes, the biological son of Ana Isabella. I leave my ranch estate in Silver Hills and the contents of my private storage. May he find what was stolen from him." There it was, proof. My real mother's name, Ana Isabella, and a property I never knew existed. When I confronted Aunt Rosa the next morning, she collapsed into a chair and whispered, "You were never supposed to find out." I asked her if she meant the truth or the inheritance. She didn't answer. They tried to stop me from going to Silver Hills, claimed the estate was a burned-out ruin, nothing left but weeds and rust. But I'd spent years being silent. I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. I left that night. Silver Hills was 3 hours away by bus and another 40-minute walk through a canyon path to reach the ranch. When I arrived, the sun had just dipped below the cliffs, and the sky bled orange and violet like an open wound. What I found was in ruins. It was a fully intact Spanish-style estate with a locked gate and a sign that read, "Property of Ana. Trespassers will be prosecuted." I was stunned. not just by the lie but by the beauty of the place. Ivy climbing the stone arches, an old fountain still dripping in the center courtyard, and a small stable in the back where a single black horse stood watching me like it had seen a ghost. I didn't know it yet, but it had, because I looked exactly like my mother. Inside the house, there were photo frames covered in dust, a bookshelf lined with journals and poetry, and in one of the drawers, tucked beside an old passport, I found the real Mysteria birth certificate. Mine, Elias Gabriel Duarte. No mention of the Reyes family, no mention of Uncle but there was a second document clipped to the back one that made my blood run cold. A restraining order, filed against Manuel Reyes by Ana Duarte. It was dated 3 months before she died. What was he doing near her? Why did she file a restraining order? And why did he end up with custody of me? That night, I sat on the floor of the ranch living room, lit only by the moonlight and a flickering oil lamp, staring at the restraining order until the edges crumbled in my fingers. I felt rage, confusion, and something worse than either, because suddenly I didn't know who I was, but I was going to find out. Even if I had to burn everything they built on lies, the ranch became my sanctuary and my battlefield. Every room held a trace of my mother Ana Duarte, the woman I'd been lied to about for 17 years. Her scent still lingered in the curtains, something floral and warm, like jasmine tea on a rainy night. I slept in her old bed, curled under a handmade quilt, surrounded by unanswered questions. The silence out here wasn't empty, it was waiting. I spent the first few days cleaning, not just for hygiene but to feel like I was rebuilding her world with my own hands. I found her journals, dozens of them, written in looping cursive with ink smudges that hinted at tears. Most of them were about me, about the fear of losing custody, about a man she once trusted turning against her. That man was Manuel Reyesma, so-called uncle. She never called him bro, she called him El Traitor, the traitor. I read entries that said things like, Manuel shows up again, asking about Elias, says he has connections with social services. I told him to leave. He threatened me with papers. I'm scared, and later filed for a restraining order. I don't know who to trust anymore, but I won't let him take Elias. I won't. And then no more entries. Her final journal stopped 3 weeks before the fire. I dug deeper. I searched the storage shed mentioned in the will. Behind a wall of rusted tools, I found a metal trunk sealed with 2 padlocks. Inside were official letters, court notices, even a paternity test. My biological father was never listed. Only this, Ana Duarte, primary custody. Biological father, deceased. So who the hell was Manuel Reyes to insert himself into her life like that? That night, as a desert storm rattled the shutters, I opened one last envelope buried at the bottom of the trunk. It was a letter addressed to me, not handwritten typed, like someone didn't want their handwriting recognized. Elias, if you are reading this, it means the truth has reached you. I did what I thought I had to. Anna wasn't safe anymore, and you weren't either. What happened the night of the fire wasn't an accident. They'll say it was, they'll all say it was, but it wasn't. You were supposed to die too, but somehow you didn't. I hope someday, when you're strong enough, you'll come find me. I read it 5 times. You were supposed to die too. That sentence echoed in my skull like a bell in a canyon. Someone had tried to kill me, not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally, and someone else saved me. But who was S? And where were they now? I needed answers. But I knew one thing: I couldn't go back to Rosa and Manuel. Not yet. Not until I knew exactly how deep this lie ran. So I made a decision. I went to the county courthouse in Silver Hills. With Ainair's documents and my ID, I filed for a full transfer of estate ownership. The ranch was officially mine now, legally, financially, and emotionally. That same day, I drove into town and walked into the sheriff's office. A woman in her early 50s sat behind the desk. Her nameplate read, Sheriff Clara Vorse. She looked up at me and paused. You and his boy. I nodded, her expression soft. He got her eyes, just like she did. I sat down and laid the restraining order and the letter from S on the desk. What happened to her? I asked. Sheriff Vorse stared at the papers for a long time before speaking. We were told it was an electrical fire. Whole thing went up in minutes. Your mom died before paramedics arrived. You were found outside, ... unconscious, but alive. That's what the report says. But, I asked. Clara looked around, then lowered her voice. I didn't believe it, even back then. Anna was careful, paranoid, even had all her wiring redone a month before the fire. She paid in cash, no records, said she didn't trust anyone. She paused. That letter from S. If it's who I think it is, she's still alive. She? I asked. Clara leaned in. Sophia Sandoval, Anna's best friend, used to work with her at the community clinic. Disappeared right after the fire. Everyone thought she moved to Mexico. You think she saved me? Clara nodded. She's the only one who could have. But she vanished before we could question her. Some said she ran because she knew too much. I swallowed hard. Do you know where I can find her? The sheriff slid a paper toward me. An old file, a forwarding address, new name, Sarah Mendoza. Location, Santa Fe. I left that day with a new mission. I was going to find the woman who saved me and make her tell me what really happened. But before I could leave town, I made one more stop. I went to see Luca. He lived in Albuquerque now, 2 hours away, working as a DJ at some grimy downtown bar. I had kept my distance for years, but I needed closure. He didn't recognize me at first. I walked in during his smoke break. When he saw my face, he froze then, smirked. Damn, look who got out of the cage. You always knew, didn't you? I asked. He shrugged. I was just a kid when it happened, but I always figured there was more to it. Why didn't you say anything? Luca exhaled smoke, looking up at the sky. Because the lies were more comfortable than the truth, and I was the favorite. Elias, you weren't supposed to survive, man. He said it so casually, like we were talking about the weather. I clenched my fists. What do you mean? I wasn't supposed to survive. He looked at me dead in the eye. Ask Uncle Manny. Ask Rosa. Ask yourself why the bedroom window was unlocked that night, just for you. And then he walked back inside. I stood there for a long time, shaking. I didn't remember escaping the fire, but someone had left that window open. Someone had pulled me out, and someone else had wanted me to burn. When I got back to the ranch that night, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and whispered the truth to myself for the first time. They tried to erase me, but I was still here, and I was just getting started. Santa Fe wasn't just a city yet, was a memory palace. Every adobe wall and turquoise gate felt like it was holding on to secrets. I arrived just before dusk, a warm golden light melting across the rooftops like honey. The forwarding address, Sheriff Voss had given me, led to a quiet, tucked-away neighborhood near Canyon Road. Art galleries lined the block, and wind chimes tinkled faintly from shaded patios. Unit 8, second floor, metal stairs, faded green door. I knocked once, no answer. I knocked again, firmer this time. Footsteps, slow, hesitant. Then the door creaked open a crack. A woman in her early 50s peeked out, short hair, soft eyes, but a face carved by grief. Her eyes locked on mine like a ghost had come knocking. Elias, she whispered. My breath caught. You're Sophia, aren't you? A long pause. Then, a shaky nod. She opened the door wider. Inside, the apartment smelled of sage and old books. Dozens of photos lined the walls. Paintings, candle altars. But one photo near the kitchen made me stop. Cold, it was a picture of my mother holding a baby. Me. Sophia saw me looking and said softly. She carried that photo everywhere, even the day of the fire. I sat down without asking. I didn't have it in me to dance around the truth anymore. I found a letter from someone who signed it. I think it was you. She closed her eyes, and for a moment I thought she might cry, but instead she nodded again. I pulled you from the flames, she said, voice barely above a whisper. You were screaming. I don't even know how I got you out. The smoke was thick, but I knew where she would have hidden you. The nursery closet, wrapped in blankets. But everyone thought I just escaped. They made sure that's what people believed, she said, bitterly. Your mother was supposed to testify. She was preparing to file charges. Charges? Against who? Her lips trembled. Against Manuel Reyes. He wasn't your Uncle Elias. He was Ana's ex. Before you were born? My mind reeled. What? He wanted full custody. Sophia went on, but the court denied it. He had a record. Domestic threats. Restraining order. He said if he couldn't have you, no one would. She thought she was safe, but her voice cracked. She wasn't. The room felt like it was spinning. I stood up, pacing. So why did he end up with me? After the fire. Sophia looked away, Because someone paid off the judge, someone forged guardianship papers, someone made Anna's past disappear and created a new one with Manuel and Rosa as your aunt and uncle. They knew the right people, and you were too young to remember. I felt sick. My whole life had been a carefully crafted illusion, built on lies, bribes, and a fire that wasn't an accident. Why didn't you come forward? I asked. I tried, she said, but after I pulled you out, I disappeared. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. The day after the fire, someone broke into my clinic and trashed everything. Files, photos. They left a message, leave it buried. I knew who it was, so I left. I've lived under a new name ever since, but you kept the photo. I could never forget you, she said. You were the last piece of her. The silence hung thick between us. I finally asked, what was she like? My mom. Sophia smiled gently through tears. Stubborn, brave, kind. She used to sing to you at night. Solito lindo. You always smiled before you fell asleep. She loved you so much. Elias. You were her whole world. That broke me. I wiped my face and stood up. I'm going to make them answer for what they did. Sophia didn't try to stop me. Instead, she handed me something, a flash drive. What's this? I asked. Proof, photos, letters, voice recordings, everything Anna gave me before she died just in case. I looked down at the tiny drive, feeling its weight like a loaded gun, and that's when a voice called from outside the window. Elias. We both froze. A shadow moved past the glass. I ran to the window and saw a man dart into a black SUV parked across the street. He peeled away before I could even read the plate. Who was that? Sophia asked, panicked. I don't know, I said, but I did. They were watching me now. Whoever had buried this truth for so long, they knew I was digging, and they weren't going to let me keep going. But it was too late for them, because I already had the match. Now it was time to light the fire. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of a cheap motel in downtown Santa Fe, with Sophia's flash drive plugged into my laptop, watching piece by piece as my mother's stolen history came back to life. There were dozens of files, some grainy photos, court letters, private emails, but the ones that crushed me were the voice memos. Her voice was soft, calm, like a quiet breeze on a summer night. If anything happens to me, Elias, I want you to know, you were never a mistake. You were the best part of my life. I fought for you every day. If they tell you otherwise, don't believe them. You are not what they'll try to make you feel like. You are not forgotten. I pressed pause, my breath shaking. I wanted to scream, to cry, to break something. But all I could do was sit there, fists clenched in silence, because now the pain wasn't vague. It had a voice, a name, a face, and I'd wasted years thinking I was unwanted, unworthy, when really, I'd been stolen. They didn't just lie to me, they stole my entire identity. By morning, I had a plan. I emailed everything to a lawyer I found through a victim advocacy group. Sophia recommended, former journalist, now a courtroom firestorm. She didn't hesitate. Meet me in Albuquerque tomorrow, she said. Bring the flash drive. We're going to burn them from the top down. I arrived at her office the next afternoon. Mariana was sharp-eyed, 30-something, with red-framed glasses and a no-nonsense tone. She reviewed everything. Then she looked me dead in the eye and said, "This isn't just criminal. This is historic. We're talking child custody, fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and attempted murder. If we do this, Elias, it's going to be messy. Your name will be everywhere. Are you ready for that?" I didn't even blink. "I've been quiet for 17 years, I said. "I'm done being a ghost." She smiled. "Good. Because this storm, it's going to echo." By the end of the week, Mariana had filed a formal complaint with the state court, backed by the evidence from the flash drive. But that wasn't the only move we made. We leaked the story. Through an anonymous tip, we sent the documents, the audio files, and scanned photos to a local journalist named Devon Pierce, someone Mariana trusted. And Devon, bless his fire-hungry heart, blew the lid off the story with one headline that ran statewide: "Stolen son, teen survives arson, raised by mother's killer. Truth uncovered 17 years later." The fallout was nuclear. News vans parked outside the Silver Hills Ranch. Reporters hunted for comment from local police, from the court clerk who approved the guardianship, and especially from Manuel and Rosa Reyes. The Reyes family went silent, but I knew they wouldn't stay quiet for long. And I was right. The next night, while I was back at the ranch, someone set fire to my barn. I woke up at 2:13 a.m. to the sound of crackling and the smell of smoke. The flames rose like a twisted echo of the past. It took the volunteer fire crew from town nearly an hour to contain it. They found gasoline trails. Someone wanted to scare me or finish what they started years ago. But this time, I wasn't a baby in a crib. This time, I was armed with proof and fury. The sheriff came to inspect. Clara Voss looked at the destruction and said quietly, "This was personal." "No kidding," I replied. And then I gave her the name I hadn't dared say aloud since Santa Fe. Arrest Manuel Reyes. The warrant was filed 2 days later. He didn't come quietly. When the police arrived at his home, now a shabby rental house with boarded windows, he tried to flee through the backyard, but he didn't get far. He was arrested for arson, fraud, and falsification of legal documents. The news footage showed him being dragged into the cruiser, screaming that I was a liar. That's when I knew he was afraid, because now the world knew who I was. Not a burden, not a mistake, not a Forster case. I was Ana Duarte's Sunand. I wasn't done yet. 3 weeks passed. Legal chaos raged. I gave interviews, sat in courtrooms, met with advocacy groups. For the first time, people listened when I spoke. And then one morning, I got a call. It was from Rosa. I nearly ignored it, but something inside told me to answer. Her voice was broken. Not fake, not syrupy, just hollow. "Elias, I don't expect forgiveness," she said, "but there's something you need to know." "Go on," I said, stone cold. "Luca, he's sick. He's cancer. Late stage. He doesn't have long. He's been asking for you." My mouth went dry. This wasn't the twist I expected. Not now. I didn't speak. Rosa sniffled. "I know what we did was unforgivable. I lied to protect Manuel, because I was afraid. But Elias, you and Luca, you were like brothers once. He's alone now. I just thought you should know." I hung up without responding, but that night, I drove to Albuquerque. Not for her, not even for Luca, but for me. For the boy I used to be, the one who once believed family meant something. Luca was in hospice, pale and thinner than I'd ever seen, tubes in his nose, bags under his eyes. When I walked in, he managed a crooked smile. "I knew you'd come," he said. I stood silently at the foot of his bed. He looked away. "I knew, about the fire, about what my dad did." "I figured," I said quietly. "I wanted to say something. I really did, but I was a coward." "No," I said. "You were just loved by the wrong people." He laughed softly. "Still poetic, huh?" He reached under his blanket and handed me something. It was a key. "What's this?" "Storage unit. Dad's old files. Everything he never wanted anyone to see." I hesitated, then took it. As I turned to leave, he said one last thing. "I wish we'd grown up as real brothers." I didn't turn around. I didn't cry. But when I got in the car, I looked up at the sky and whispered, "Me too." I stood in front of storage unit number 231, key in hand, cold wind brushing against my neck. It had been a week since Luca died. He passed in his sleep 2 nights after I visited. No last words, no long speeches, just silence, like a curtain dropped on an unfinished act. And somehow, even after everything, it still hurt. I unlocked the unit. The heavy metal door creaked open, revealing dust-covered boxes stacked unevenly, a few filing cabinets rusting in the corners, and a lone folding chair in the middle, like someone had once sat here for hours watching the past rot. I started with the cabinets. Legal documents, letters, and scribbled notes in Manuel's unmistakable handwriting, sharp, rigid, impatient. Most of it was boring. Tax evasion tricks, court schedules, property scams. But one folder was labeled in red marker. I opened it slowly. Inside were dozens of printed photo sums, others zoomed-in stills of her walking to the store, pushing me in a stroller, laughing with Sophia. Paperclipped to each photo were yellowed notes. "Keep eyes on her. Met with attorney again. Child might not be mine." That last one made me freeze. Might not be mine. Beneath those was a letter, torn at the edges, dated 1 week before the fire. It was from Anata Manuel. "You were never Eli's father. I never lied about that. You knew from the beginning, but you wanted him anyway because of your pride, because of your obsession. I won't live like this anymore. If anything happens to me, everyone will know what you are. I've left instructions. I've told Sophia everything. You won't get away with this. Not this time." I staggered back, heart racing. All these years I thought Manuel wanted to raise me out of control, out of spite, out of ownership. But now I realized it had been obsession, not with me, but with the fact that I wasn't his. He didn't try to keep me because I was family. He tried to erase me because I wasn't. That wasn't the twist. The twist came from the paternity test taped to the inside of the folder, a name I'd never seen before. Father, Santiago M. Delgado. The name hit me like a punch to the ribs, because I'd heard that name before. It was carved into a memorial stone in the center of Silver Hills, honoring local firefighters who died in service. And suddenly, memories flashed off Sophia once saying, "Your mother loved a man who ran into danger before thinking." That man was Santiago. A hero. A man who died in a warehouse collapse just weeks after I was born. My real father. And all this time, that truth had been buried beneath lies, control, and fire. I dropped the papers, clutching my head. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment, it felt like I couldn't move, like gravity had doubled just to break me. They stole my mother, my life, and even the memory of my father, so they could raise me like a burden instead of a son. I took everything, stuffed the folder into my backpack. I didn't even lock the storage unit on the way out. Let them find the ashes. I was done burying the past. Now, I was going to resurrect it and set it ablaze. That night, I called Mariana. We added the new evidence to the case. The photos, the paternity test, the obsession logs, all of it. She said the trial date had been moved up. Public pressure, media attention. People were demanding justice. And deep down, I wanted it too. But justice didn't feel like enough anymore. I wanted truth. I wanted recognition. I wanted someone to finally say it. Elias Duarte was worth loving. The night before the trial, I returned to the ranch. Alone, no cameras, no reporters, just me, and a box of my mother's journals. I sat by the old fireplace and read every entry. Her dreams, her fears, her poetry. She once wrote, "Sometimes I wonder if Elias will grow up to be a storm or the eye inside one. I hope he chooses light, but I'll love him, even if he brings thunder." I closed the journal and whispered, "You got both, Mama, you got both." The trial was a storm. Manuel pled not guilty to all charges, but the evidence buried him alive. Sophia testified. Mariana tore through the judge, a woman with no patience for injustice, looked at Manuel like he was something scraped off a boot. And when it was my turn to testify, I stood tall. I told them about the fire, the attic, the lies, the years of being called a guest in my own life. I told them I forgave Man, and that was the part that shocked everyone. Not because he deserved it, but because I refused to carry him any longer. After I stepped down, the courtroom was silent. Even Rosa cried. Manuel was sentenced to 22 years, and me, I walked out into the sunlight that day, not a victim, not a survivor, but a man who had finally reclaimed his name. Elias Gabriel Duarte, son of Ana Duarte, son of Santiago child of flame, built from ash, born again from truth. I returned to the ranch not to hide but to write. I published my story in a memoir titled The Son Who Lived Twice. It went viral, not because it was tragic, but because it was true. I used the money to build a literacy center in Silver Hills, named it the Ana and Santiago Foundation for Children Without Voices, because for too long I didn't have one. But now I speak loudly for every forgotten child who ever asked, was I ever loved? And to who just heard my story, who felt the cracks, the fire, the fury. I want to ask, if the people who raised you weren't your real family, what would you do when the truth finally knocks? Tell me in the comments. I'm listening. I always am. Because sometimes all it takes is one voice to bring the truth home.